I was 14 years old at the time, and this was the 3 most confusing days of my adolescent life. The noise was persistent, and adults were drinking, laughing, screaming and crying, and chairs were flying at different people. And I was there eating all these peanuts and drinking chrysanthemum tea like there was no tomorrow. I was highly confused, and all this was happening at my void deck. A void deck in Singapore is the base, like the lowest level of a HDB building, a high-rise building. I lived on the 24th floor, and we usually use the void deck to hang out, do our homework. But that day, the void deck was transformed. There was fluorescent lights in front of me and above me, and thick red and yellow cloth hung everywhere. I remember thinking, oh, my mom's not gonna like this. It's a bit gross. And I started to wonder if I could change anything around here. You see, I don't know if you remember being 14 years old, but I thought I knew everything, absolutely everything. I could be a spiritual guru, I could be a relationship advisor, I could be an interior designer. Just ask me anything and I would know the answer. As I grew up, of course, I realized that thinking that you know everything is the hallmark of stupidity. And I was 14 years old, I knew absolutely nothing at all. So there I was, and there were joss sticks standing right in front of me, 2 long joss sticks, and it was burning non-stop. And in my delirium, I saw the smoke as dragons floating up and little rabbits going up, up and away. Behind the joss sticks were my mother's favorite drink, cordon bleu, and her favorite cigarettes, Virginia Slims. Behind that, her picture, her beautiful smiling face. I haven't seen her smile like that in a long time. And behind that, her body. I was 14 years old and at my mother's funeral. If you're involved in a Chinese funeral, you're not going to get much sleep. My mother's funeral was short, only 3 days. Some funeral goes for 7 or even 9 days. And you don't get much sleep because someone always has to be looking after the body. You have to make sure that the joss sticks are always burning, that no cats coming in and bring bad luck to the body, and that the 2 lights under the coffin has to be lit at all times. On the first day of the funeral, I heard a rumor that I might be sent to an orphanage. You see, at 14 years old, my dad had already passed away when I was 6, and my only remaining relative was my brother, who was 22 years old and a gangster. So it wasn't appropriate. And then the day went on, and I heard more rumors through the funeral grapevine, and I heard that an uncle with kind eyes, a beautiful wife, and gorgeous children, all of whom I adored, wanted to take me in. I was really grateful, but I felt like, oh, I don't really want to push, poke, and plonk myself right in the middle of a nuclear family. What if my presence was too potent and I caused some kind of explosion there? And at 14 years old, I knew that I was not a good child. I was too slutty, I was too weird, I was too black in the heart, and I often said the wrong things at the wrong time. There was one point on the first day that I was sitting on a red plastic chair around a big wooden table with all my neighbors from upstairs who's come down to visit, and we were all sitting there talking, and one of my neighbors, who I quite like, actually asked me, Merlynn, I asked you something. Can you tell me, right, what happened? Your mother actually what happened? How she died? And I let it slip out of my mouth and then think about it. I'm like, oh, she committed suicide. And the conversation ended. An aunt of mine pulled me aside politely, pulled me to a corner, and then smacked me on the head and said, "Don't say that. Don't say that naughty thing. Say heart attack. Always say heart attack. Okay? Huh? You got no shame, is it? Huh?" You see, it was popular belief amongst some of my relatives at that time that I indeed had no shame. You see, I really, really liked boys at 14 years old. I was a horny child. I think I still am today. And case in point, my boyfriend at 14 years old was at the funeral. He was there every single day. And one day I was sitting with him, Jerry was his name. Him and all my friends were sitting around that big wooden table when Emmanuel showed up. Emmanuel is one of my good friends, and my mom really loved him. And he was also a boy that had a crush on me for a very long time. He sat opposite me and Jerry, and he was like staring daggers at Jerry the whole time, and I imagine it was because of my insatiable beauty. And I was like, okay. But after half an hour of this jealous staring, he walked over to Jerry, stood in front of him and said, "Hey, 你是我表哥是吗?" Which translates to, "Hey, are you my older cousin?" And then they stood up and both started beaming and did this hand patting on each other's shoulders, which is, I think, an awkward Chinese boy way of hugging someone. The next moment, chairs were flying, not from my table, but from the table over there, which was my mother's friends and relatives. You see, John has arrived. John was my mother's boyfriend right before she passed away, and hence was not the most popular person at the funeral. I think some people still blamed him. So he was walking in and my mum's brother saw him, picked up a chair and flung it at him, and he flew into the bushes, mostly in shock, I think. And I quickly moved away. I didn't really want to engage with him, because he's been like a father to me for 6 years, and after he broke up with my mother, it just got really awkward. So I went to the back and hung out with my friends. See, when I'm hanging out with my friends, I didn't have to think about orphanages or what was going to happen after the funeral. I could just be a kid and just relax, and I laugh sometimes. I had fun at my mom's funeral. I think that was another point that proved that I wasn't a good child. At that age, I haven't learned how to put on a thick cloak of accepted and expected social behavior. I had fun at my mom's funeral. And then I was going to get more peanuts to pop and more chrysanthemum tea to drink when I saw that I was not the only one having fun. That table that just flung John into the bushes, they were now, John was risen from the bushes and joining that table. They were all drinking and laughing together. And they were drinking cordon bleu, the drink that my mom used to kill herself. I thought, isn't that really, really morbid? I mean, adults are so fickle. I don't understand them. And then it was time to go upstairs. Oh, meanwhile, yes, Jerry and Emmanuel are scooting around on their motorbikes and laughing like there's no tomorrow. I'm like, what is happening here? Then that night, we all went upstairs to my flat on the 24th floor. One of my uncles stayed downstairs to look after the body, and all of us crammed into the 2 rooms like sardines. And one of my auntie used rice and sprinkled them from the front door all the way to my mother's room. We were all in this wakeful sleep because we were all so bloody exhausted, but at the same time, we were also curious as to whether my mom would come back on this special night and go to her room. The next morning, we found no footprints in the rice, and I was quite happy because my mom had such a bad time in this world. I was hoping that she had already found that other place. And now it was the 3rd day of the funeral. It was the day that we had to burn my mother's body. I was looking into the open casket at her cold face for the last time when a cousin of mine leaned over my mother's face from the other side and said, you look carefully. This is your mother. Your mother is dead. Stop having fun, okay? Have some bloody fucking respect for your mother. She's dead. And she ran off. I mean, I was shocked. She was my age. She was not allowed to say things like that to me. I switched on to autopilot somehow, chased after her, yelled at her and said, you cannot speak to me like that. And in what was becoming a fast family ritual, I picked up one of those plastic red chairs and flung it at the bitch. Meanwhile, a whole meeting was happening at this big wooden table, and one of my uncles stood up and said, he banged the table and 从今天起啊，你们唐家的事不是我们的事了 which translates to, from today onwards, anything to do with the Tong family has nothing to do with us. My last name is Tong. Later I realized that their family didn't want to have any financial implications because my brother and I were orphaned now. My uncle with the kind eyes came up to me right away and said he would want to take me in. He was still very keen, but I really didn't want to, but who was I to say no? I was the slutty, weird, angsty kid who just threw a chair at someone. I don't feel like I had the right to choose, but at that moment my gangster brother swooped in and said, if you want, you and me, we continue living on our house, the 24th floor, I raise you. And he did. And he's fantastic, he's still my hero until today. It was time to go on the bus on the way to the funeral. My auntie, one of my aunties, sat behind me and she said very loudly, clearly for my benefit, "Wow, somebody very happy lah. Mother die, father die, huh? Now stay with gangster brother, so much freedom, huh? Must be very happy, this girl." That broke me. I sobbed and I sobbed. Now, looking back, I know that everybody was just trying to cope with their individual grief. At that point, I thought maybe she was trying to help me. Maybe they were all trying to help me cry in front of other people, something which I absolutely hated doing, but is the social protocol when your mom dies. And the reason why her words stung so much was because, yeah, she was right. I was happy. I was happy that I didn't have to see, I was happy that my mom was going to go to a better place. I was happy that at 14 years old, I had a new beginning. I didn't have to carry my mother's heavy body home from pubs anymore and have strange men yell nasty things at us. I was happy that I didn't have to come home after school and drink alcohol with my mother anymore. I was happy that I didn't have to hear her cry and wail every night. I was happy that I didn't have to hear her tell me, after I die this will be yours, after I die this will happen, you know, when I go this. I was happy that I didn't have to wake up each morning and wonder whether or not I'll see her. Because now, after 3 days of confusion, as they lowered my mother's body into a pit of flames, I suddenly realized that my mummy has truly left me. Thank you.